Welcome to my user interface remapping proposal for Spiderman Remastered. During this presentation I'll be going over the flaws of the current UI and how I can improve it. To begin, I will go over my goals for the project. They are to add spatial UI in gameplay, adding personality back to the menus, optimizing the flow for controller usage, and optimizing the space use in the UI itself. The screens I have chosen to rework are the main menu, the save load screen, the save screen itself, screenshot screen, gameplay HUD, inventory screen, skills screen, map, and the pause screen. Before diving into the specific scenes, here are some general changes that I made across the board. One of my main focuses when changing the UI is adding personality of the character back into all of the elements. One of the easiest and most impactful ways to do this is by changing the font from a generic modern aesthetic back to a font that a fan might be familiar with. To do this, I found fonts inspired by the current Home trilogy and the previous films, such as The Amazing Spider-Man. I have also included an easily readable font for larger blocks of text. One of the major things that I focused on was the core issue of red and blue being the core colors of the entire UI. This meant any kind of visual impairment causing red or blue to have less impact on the page causes the UI to overall changing characteristics. To combat this, I made sure to use both a dark and a light shade of each color to clearly differentiate between the two. Moving on to the main menu, the existing one is consistent with its styling, simple and clear. Although it makes poor use of white space, doesn't really scream Spider-Man, and information feels incorrectly situated on the screen due to its column-based design. My goal for this screen was to optimize it for controller input by providing two different paths that optimize the flow. As you can see in the proposal, I've tried to blend spatial elements into the gameplay and add back character to the original buttons. I have also increased the font size so it is easier to read, as this game is commonly played in a more relaxed position. Moving on to the save load screen, it has consistent styling, showcases a lot of information, simple and quite clear. Although the font is quite small and there is a lot of information in it, so it can be quite hard to read at times. My proposal follows a grid-based design and brings it into the style of my other reworked UI screens. I decided to implement aspects from Jacob Nielsen's heuristic model by keeping it consistent with the other screens, removing clutter, and just giving the icon and a save name, so it is much easier on the player's eyes. One of the major frustrations with the game as it currently is the fact that it has a dedicated photo mode, but no way in-game to access the pictures that you take. This is where my entirely new screen comes in, the screenshot screen. I have tried to stick to the grid-based design of the save screen to allow familiarity between screens. I have tried to style the icons in the theme of Peter Parker as he is a photographer himself, and implemented a simple expand UI, which allows the player to see their pictures at full resolution. Moving on to the heads-up display during gameplay. The original is relatively minimal, gives you a compass to orient yourself, has a minimap which you can mark routes on, and has consistent styling with the rest of the game's UI. Unfortunately, the minimap is in an uncommon spot in the bottom left. The weapon select feels clunky when you're in combat. The navigation markers are both on the minimap and in the world, which can feel overloading at times, and you can't see what weapon you have equipped without firing it. The first thing that I wanted to do with this screen was relocate the minimap to the top right of the screen, as that's where it's most commonly located. I have also replaced the equip wheel with a toggle on the D-pad that rotates through the weapons, or with a different input they can switch back to their favorite. Moving on to the inventory screen rework. The old screen makes use of columns to section off the elements, clearly shows the character, and has consistent styling with the rest of the UI. Unfortunately, it has far too much wasted space, the player stats are hidden away in the bottom left, and the description for the perks is relatively small and feels lost in the white space. In the redesign, I've tried to approach it with a hierarchical style, giving it larger icons to more game-changing elements. I have also tried to implement the Gestalt rule of proximity to showcase the character mods are all associated with one another, and that's why they all group together. I have also enlarged the player stats, and with code support these would change depending on what mods are equipped. Although this screen still has an issue of white space, I feel like it's better used and it's not just big blocks cut out of the UI. Moving on to the skill screen rework. The existing menu makes good use of columns to section off the different elements, cuts down on wasted white space by having all 3 trees on screen at once, and has a clear showcase of the player's progression via progress bars at the bottom. Unfortunately, the information is really condensed on the far right of the screen, and by having all trees on screen at the same time, there's a lot of wasted space. In my redesign, I've tried to condense all the trees into one section that slowly rotates between all 3. I have also enlarged the perk descriptions so there is less information on space and less visual load on the player. There is also space for a video to be implemented, but I was not able to source these videos in time. We've changed how the skill cost is shown to the player by adding an icon that overlays on the icon that they've clicked on, showcasing the price, and with a green outline if they can purchase it, or a red outline if they need to purchase prerequisite perks. With code support, I would add the function to buy all the perks up to the selected perk with a longer button press. One of the major features of this screen is the recommended perks section. This gives new players guidance as to what perks they should probably buy, which helps avoid players feeling lost. Moving on to the map rework. The existing map fits in with the UI theming pretty well. It actually looks really nice, and the map legend is extremely clear. Unfortunately, it can be really hard to read. It has a lot of space for the map legend, which covers up the map a lot. The map itself feels quite restricted due to the columns on the left and the right of it being populated with content. In my rework, I tried to use a more hierarchical design, where the map legend can both be expanded and collapsed to show off the information. I have implemented tick boxes which allows the player to toggle on and off icons that they are currently searching for, although in the current prototype I'm limited by the variable function in Figma, so I cannot showcase them all. There is a downside to doing it this way, and that is, unfortunately, I need to use different screens to show all the toggles, and are not all clearly shown on one screen as before. Moving on to the pause screen rework. The existing pause screen fits the UI theming, has clear titles, and doesn't break the immersion due to the character still being visible behind it. Unfortunately, it looks very plain and the text is really small on the screen. In my redesign, I changed the text out for icons so it's clearly visible at all ranges. I also tried to maintain the spatial element, but instead used a mobile phone as the overlay rather than just a blue bar. I tried to make sure this was well optimized for controller input. Common features such as resume, load previous save, and save are within one button press of the menu opening.